If you've ever grown up in the shadow of someone else, you'll understand me. My name is Elena, and for as long as I can remember, my family has had one golden rule. Claire comes first. Claire is my sister, 2 years younger than me, but you'd never know it from the way my parents treat us. To them, she has always been the favorite, the shining star, the one they brag about, the one they shower with affection, the one they sacrifice everything for. And me, I was the reliable one, the one they didn't worry about, the one who didn't need the extra attention, the extra gifts, the extra love, or so they claimed. For years, I tried to swallow that truth. I told myself I was fine being second. I told myself it didn't matter. But then came that night. The night when their favoritism didn't just sting. It shattered something inside me. The night I realized I had been invisible for far too long. The night I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. It started at a family celebration. My parents had gathered us all together, insisting it was going to be an unforgettable evening. I thought, maybe this time it's for me. Maybe they'd finally noticed the promotion I'd worked so hard for. Maybe they wanted to celebrate my new apartment or the certification I'd just earned. Maybe, just maybe, it was my turn to be seen. I spent the whole day trying not to get my hopes up, but my heart betrayed me. As I drove to their house, I kept rehearsing my smile in the rearview mirror, imagining what it would feel like to finally be the center of their pride. But deep down, I should have known better. Because when I walked in, all eyes were already on Claire. She was standing in the living room, laughing as she held a glass of champagne. Her wrist glittered with a brand new bracelet, delicate gold with tiny diamonds that caught the light. My mom beamed at her. My dad clapped her on the back like she'd just won a Nobel Prize. Relatives crowded around, admiring the jewelry, showering her with compliments. "Claire deserves it," my mom gushed. "She's been working so hard." I froze in the doorway, my smile faltering. Working so hard? Claire had just started a new hobby last month, something to do with pottery or painting. I couldn't even keep track anymore. And this bracelet? It was their way of encouraging her creative spirit. Meanwhile, I had spent years grinding at my job, climbing the ladder, sacrificing weekends and nights. I'd bought my own place without a cent of help, but had anyone ever thrown me a party, bought me jewelry, called me hardworking? Not once. I forced myself to step into the room, hugging relatives, plastering on a polite smile. Nobody asked me about my work. Nobody even noticed I'd cut my hair or that I was wearing the new dress I'd saved up for. It was like I was invisible. Again. Dinner was even worse. The table buzzed with stories about Claire, her latest projects, her funny anecdotes, her charming smile. My parents leaned in with glowing faces, hanging on her every word. When I tried to chime in, the conversation shifted away before I'd even finished my sentence. At one point, I mentioned casually, "Oh, I just got promoted to senior manager last week." My dad nodded distractedly. "That's nice, Elena." Then he turned to Claire. "So, sweetheart, tell us more about your pottery class." I sat there, the words dying on my tongue. It built and built, this pressure in my chest. Every laugh, every compliment, every admiring glance at Claire, it all piled on top of me until I thought I might explode. And then, when dessert was served, my mom stood up with a flourish. "We have one more surprise for Claire," she announced, her voice brimming with pride. She pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate diamond necklace. The room gasped. Claire squealed, hugging our mom, tears in her eyes. My dad raised his glass. "To Claire, the light of our family." The table erupted in cheers. And me? I sat there staring at the necklace, my stomach twisting. That was the moment. That was when it hit me like a punch to the gut. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be enough for them. I would never be Claire. And that realization broke something inside me. I excused myself from the table, muttering something about needing fresh air. My legs carried me to the bathroom, where I locked the door and gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. My face was pale, my eyes brimming with tears. For years, I had told myself it didn't matter, that being the responsible one was enough, that my worth wasn't measured in gifts or attention. But standing there in that bathroom, listening to the muffled laughter outside, I couldn't deny it anymore. It did matter. It mattered more than I wanted to admit. Because being invisible in your own family doesn't just sting. It eats away at you piece by piece until there's nothing left. And that night, I realized I was done being invisible. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This time, their favoritism, their blind adoration, their complete disregard for me was unforgettable. Because it was the night I decided something had to change. The night I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. When I tell people about that night, they sometimes say, "Come on, Elena, maybe it was just one bad dinner. Maybe you're overthinking it, but they don't understand." That night wasn't a one-time thing. It was the final straw. My family's favoritism toward Claire didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was woven into my childhood like an invisible thread, binding every memory, every holiday, every milestone. It's been there since the very beginning. I still remember the first time I felt it. I was about 6 years old. Claire was 4, and it was Christmas morning. We raced down the stairs in our pajamas, giggling as we saw the tree lit up, presents piled underneath. I grabbed a medium-sized box with my name on it, tearing the wrapping paper excitedly. Inside was a simple doll. Not bad, not amazing, just a doll. Then I watched as Claire unwrapped hers. It wasn't just a doll. It was the dream house. The kind that came with miniature furniture, little outfits, tiny details that made my 6-year-old jaw drop. "Oh, she's gonna love it," my mom said, smiling proudly as Claire squealed with delight. I sat there quietly with my plain doll in my lap, trying not to feel jealous. They just wanted to make her happy, I told myself. But then it kept happening. Birthdays. For my 8th birthday, I got a modest cake, some clothes, and a board game. For Claire's 6th birthday, a backyard party with balloons, a rented clown, and a pony. School awards. When I brought home straight A's, my dad would say, "Good job, Elena." I knew you'd do well, that was it. A pat on the back. But when Claire won a participation ribbon in her art class, there was a whole celebration dinner. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," my mom gushed, snapping pictures, hanging the ribbon on the fridge like it was Olympic gold. As we got older, it only got worse. When I made the soccer team in middle school, my parents couldn't make a single game. "We're busy, honey, but we know you'll do great." When Claire joined a dance recital, the whole family came, cameras flashing, flowers waiting in their hands. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Kids can be sensitive, right? Maybe I was just too focused on the differences. But as the years passed, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Claire was the special one, I was the responsible one. And those roles never changed. I remember one summer in high school that really cemented it for me. I had worked all year babysitting, saving up to buy myself a used guitar. I loved music, and teaching myself to play felt like a little rebellion, a way to carve out something that was mine. When I finally bought it secondhand and a little scratched up, I was so proud. I showed it off at dinner, strumming a few chords I had learned from YouTube. "That's nice," my dad said without looking up from his phone. My mom barely glanced at it. "Don't stay up too late practicing, okay?" "You've got chores in the morning," I tried to shrug it off. But 2 weeks later, Claire casually mentioned that she thought painting might be fun to try. The next day, my parents surprised her with a full art kit. Easels, canvases, brushes, expensive paints. "Because you're so creative, honey," my mom said, hugging her. I sat there with my scratched-up guitar in my lap, my throat tight, wondering what it would take for them to see me as more than just the kid who didn't need anything. The funny thing is, Claire wasn't even mean about it. Not back then, anyway. She was just used to being adored. She'd beam at the gifts, soak up the attention, and then turn to me with a sweet smile. "Wanna try painting with me, Elena?" she'd ask, and I would. Because deep down, I didn't resent her. I resented them. I resented being invisible. By the time we hit college, the favoritism was so blatant it was almost laughable. I worked 2 part-time jobs to pay for tuition, balancing homework and shifts, running on caffeine and stress. Claire? My parents dipped into their savings to cover her tuition, her dorm fees, her books, even her meal plan. "She's our baby," my mom said when I once asked why Claire got so much help. "You're older, more independent." "You can handle it." I wanted to scream. Yes, I could handle it. But that didn't mean I didn't want to be cared for. That didn't mean I didn't want to feel like their daughter, too. There was one moment in particular that still stings. Graduation. I had managed to graduate with honors despite all the extra hours I worked. I walked across that stage, shaking as I clutched my diploma, searching the crowd for my parents. They were there, but they weren't cheering loudly. They didn't have flowers waiting. They didn't take me out for a celebratory dinner. "We're proud of you," my dad said as we walked to the car. "But we really should get going. We promised Claire we'd help her move into her new apartment today." I'll never forget how my diploma felt in my hands, heavy, hard-earned, and completely overlooked. Looking back, it's almost funny how long I let it slide. I told myself it was normal, that some families were just like this, that Claire needed more attention, and I was strong enough to live without it. But that strength came at a cost. It made me shrink. It made me second-guess myself. It made me bury my achievements so deep I sometimes wondered if they mattered at all. And that's why that dinner, the one with the necklace, hit me so hard. It wasn't just about the necklace. It was about a lifetime of being pushed aside, a lifetime of being told in 1,000 little ways that I was less than, that Claire mattered more. And I didn't. When I left the bathroom that night, wiping at my eyes, I carried not just the weight of that evening, but the weight of every Christmas, every birthday, every forgotten milestone. It all came flooding back, sharper than ever, and I knew that what happened next, whatever I chose to do, would change everything. Because this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. This time, I wasn't going to let them pretend it was okay. People always assume favoritism fades once kids grow up. They think parents eventually see both children as adults, equals, independent people. But in my family, it only got worse. If anything, adulthood magnified the differences between me and Claire. Because while I was out in the real world fighting tooth and nail to survive, my parents made sure Claire's path was smoothed over with velvet cushions and golden safety nets. After college, I landed my first full-time job at a marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous and the pay wasn't great, but it was mine. I worked insane hours, often eating ramen at my desk, just trying to keep up with deadlines. Meanwhile, Claire decided she wanted to explore her passions. That translated into hopping from one hobby to another, dabbling in short courses, switching majors twice, and eventually declaring she was going to be an artist. And my parents? They treated it like she'd discovered the cure for cancer. "We'll cover your rent while you get started," my mom said cheerfully. "You just focus on your art, sweetheart." I stared at her, dumbfounded. Rent covered for months. Meanwhile, when I struggled to pay my bills, my dad simply said, "That's life, Elena." everyone has to hustle when they're young, I learned quickly that independence meant sink or swim for me, while for Claire it meant float on a raft someone else provided. And she floated beautifully. Trips to Europe, paid for by my parents, because cultural experiences are important for artists. New car on her 25th birthday, a studio space rented in her name, complete with supplies my dad bought. When I turned 25, I got a sweater. No joke. I don't mean to sound bitter, or maybe I do, but it wasn't just about the money or the gifts. It was about the message behind them. Every action said, Claire deserves investment. Claire deserves nurturing. Claire deserves to shine. And me? I was the reliable one. The one who would figure it out. The one who didn't need the same support, even though I craved it more than I'd ever admit. Still, I tried to keep peace. I kept working, kept grinding, kept smiling through the family dinners where Claire's latest projects were the only topic of conversation. Like the time she painted 3 canvases with random splashes of color and called it an exploration of emotion. My parents hosted a small gathering at their house to showcase her talent. They invited family friends, served wine and appetizers, clapped like she was the next Picasso. I stood in the corner clutching my glass of soda, wondering if anyone had noticed the award I'd just won at work. Of course not. It wasn't even mentioned. But the truth, the resentment was building. Quietly, steadily, like a fire smoldering beneath ashes. And Claire, whether she realized it or not, added fuel to the flames. It started small. Jokes about how I was so uptight compared to her. Comments about how I worked too much, how I wasn't living life. Then, one Thanksgiving, she looked across the table at me and said with a laugh, "Elena, you're basically the boring sister." "You should try being fun for once," everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I smiled stiffly, but inside the words burned, because that's what I had become in their eyes. The boring, responsible, invisible one, the opposite of Claire. The gap between us grew wider when relationships came into play. I had been dating someone seriously for nearly 2 years. He was kind, steady, and we were talking about moving in together. When I introduced him to my parents, they were polite but distant, asking a few generic questions before steering the conversation back to Claire's latest art show. When Claire started dating someone, it was fireworks. Dinners, introductions, long talks with my dad about his career goals. They practically rolled out a red carpet for her boyfriend. When that relationship ended, my mom comforted her for weeks, baking cookies, sending care packages, calling every night. When mine ended a few months later, I got a text. "Sorry, honey. You'll bounce back." That was it. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was erasure. And it left me questioning everything. Was I actually boring? Was I unworthy of the same love? Did they secretly think I was a disappointment? Because if your own family doesn't value you, how do you convince yourself that you matter? One night, after another exhausting week at work, I came home and collapsed on my couch. My phone buzzed with a group text from my parents. Family dinner Saturday. Big surprise for Claire. Don't be late. Of course. Another surprise. Another evening where I'd sit in the background while she was showered with gifts. I tossed my phone aside, tears stinging my eyes. I wanted to skip it, to avoid the ache altogether. But a part of me still hoped, pathetically, desperately, that maybe one day the big surprise would be for me. Maybe they'd finally see me. But that's the thing about hope. It's a cruel trick. It keeps you going long past the point where you should have given up. And that dinner, the one with the diamond necklace, was the cruelest trick of all. Because deep down, I'd let myself believe that maybe, finally, it would be my turn. And when it wasn't, when it was just another celebration of Claire, that tiny thread of hope snapped. And I realized something terrifying. If I didn't stand up, if I didn't speak out, this pattern would never end. I would stay invisible forever. So as I sat there that night, the necklace glittering around Claire's neck, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to swallow it this time. I wasn't going to smile politely and pretend it didn't matter. I was going to confront them. Not tomorrow, not someday, right then. And I had no idea what was about to happen next. The words were bubbling in my throat like boiling water, and I couldn't hold them back anymore. The moment my dad raised his glass and said, "To Claire, the light of our family," something inside me snapped. I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. The room quieted. All eyes turned toward me. For once, I didn't shrink under the attention. For once, I let the anger pour out. "Do you even hear yourselves?" I said, my voice trembling, not from fear, but from years of being silenced. They blinked at me in confusion. "What do you mean, honey?" my mom asked, her smile faltering slightly. I laughed, bitterly. "What do I mean? Are you kidding me? Look around this room. Look at how you treat Claire compared to me. Every single thing she does, you throw a party. Every tiny step she takes, you shower her with gifts. And me, I could work myself to death, and the best I'd get is a pat on the back, if that." The silence was deafening. Claire set down her champagne glass, her eyes darting nervously between me and our parents. "Elena, maybe this isn't—" "No, Claire," I cut her off, my voice rising. Don't try to smooth this over. You've always had them wrapped around your finger and you know it." Her cheeks flushed, but she stayed quiet. My mom shook her head, flustered. "That's not fair, Elena." "We love you both the same." I slammed my hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "No, you don't. You say you do, but your actions tell a different story. Do you want me to list them?" Because I could go on all night, I turned to my dad. "When I got straight A's, you barely noticed. When Claire won a participation ribbon, you took us out to dinner." I looked back at my mom. "When I graduated with honors, you left early to help Claire move. When I bought my first apartment, you didn't even come see it, but you rented her a studio for her art." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "And tonight? Tonight was supposed to be unforgettable. Do you know how badly I let myself hope, just for once, that maybe it was about me? That maybe I'd get to feel like your daughter, not just the placeholder standing next to your golden child?" My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. But no. Of course not. It was just another necklace. Another reminder that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, I will never, ever be enough for you. The room was frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Elena, you're overreacting. Claire is the younger one. She needs more support." I laughed again, sharp and bitter. "She's 27 years old. She's not a baby, she's not helpless, and she sure as hell doesn't need another diamond necklace. But you treat her like she's the center of the universe, while I, your oldest daughter, am just—" "What? The reliable one? The one you don't need to bother with?" My mom's eyes filled with tears. "That's not true, sweetheart." "Don't call me sweetheart," I snapped. The room gasped at my tone, but I didn't care. "Do you know what it feels like to sit at this table and watch you celebrate her over and over again while I sit here invisible? Do you know what it's like to kill yourself working, to achieve everything on your own, only to have your parents look right through you? Do you even realize how cruel that is?" Claire finally spoke, her voice quiet. "Elena, I didn't ask them to do all this for me." I turned to her, my eyes blazing. "I know you didn't, but you never stopped it either. You never once said, "Hey, maybe Elena deserves some attention too." You just basked in it while I sat in the shadows. Her face paled, and for the first time, she didn't have a smug retort. I stood there, chest heaving, the words spilling out faster now. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm done laughing it off. And I'm done being the daughter you only remember when it's convenient. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. So enjoy your party. Enjoy your golden child. Because I'm done playing this game. And before anyone could stop me, I walked out. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it felt cleaner than the suffocating room I'd just left. I could hear my mom calling after me faintly, her voice wavering, but I didn't turn back. I climbed into my car, slamming the door shut, my hands trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. For a moment, I just sat there in the dark, my breath ragged, tears streaming silently down my face. And then, for the first time in years, I let myself feel it all. The anger, the grief, the betrayal. It crashed over me like a tidal wave, years of buried pain finally breaking free. But beneath it, something else flickered, something I hadn't felt before. Resolve, because if they couldn't see my worth, if they refused to value me, then I would stop begging for it. I would stop waiting for scraps of affection. I would build a life where I didn't need their approval, where my success, my happiness, my self-worth wouldn't depend on them anymore. As I drove away from that house, the necklace flashing in my mind like a cruel reminder, I made myself a promise. I would never let them make me feel invisible again. Not my parents, not Claire, not anyone. And that promise was the beginning of everything. The beginning of the life I was about to build without them. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over in my head. My father's dismissive tone, my mother's tears, Claire's shocked silence. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far, if maybe I had been dramatic, if maybe they were right, if I was overreacting. But then I remembered the years, the birthdays overshadowed, the graduations cut short, the quiet dismissals, the endless Claire first moments. Number. I hadn't overreacted. I had finally reacted. And that was different. The days that followed were quiet. I didn't hear from my parents. No texts, no calls, not even from Claire. For the first time in my life, my phone stayed silent where my family was concerned. It was strange, lonely even, but also liberating. Because in the silence, I could finally hear myself. I poured my energy into work. I had been promoted to senior manager just a few weeks before that dinner. But instead of celebrating, I had let the moment get buried under my family's indifference. Now, I celebrated for myself. I took myself out to dinner the night my first big campaign launched. I bought myself flowers when I signed a new client. I framed the award I'd won and hung it on my living room wall where I could see it every day. For once, I didn't wait for someone else to clap for me. I clapped for myself. And you know what? It felt good. It felt like reclaiming something I'd been denied my whole life. The validation I'd begged for from my parents, I gave it to myself. Every achievement, every milestone, no matter how small, I celebrated it. And slowly, piece by piece, that invisible weight I'd carried, the one that whispered I wasn't enough, started to lift. But it wasn't just about work. I started investing in me. I signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I joined a hiking group, rediscovering the joy of being outside, of moving my body, of breathing fresh air instead of office AC. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with because I'd been too focused on trying to win my parents' approval. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel whole, Like maybe I wasn't the boring sister after all. Maybe I was just me, and maybe that was enough. Months passed before I heard from my family again. It was Claire who reached out first. A simple text. "Hey, can we talk?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part of me, the part that still remembered late-night giggles with her as kids, the way we'd shared secrets under the covers, couldn't say no. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her sleeves, avoiding my eyes. "Listen," she began, her voice quiet, "about that night. You were right." I blinked, stunned. She looked up, her eyes glassy. "I never meant to, take everything from you. I like the attention, and I didn't realize how much it hurt you until you said it out loud." For the first time, I saw something genuine in her expression. Not smugness, not superiority, just guilt. "I'm sorry, Elena," she whispered. And against all odds, I believed her. Our relationship didn't magically heal that day, but it shifted. Claire stopped making those little jabs, stopped flaunting things in front of me. She started asking about my work, about my life. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. As for my parents, that was harder. They eventually reached out too, asking to meet, to talk things through. I went, more out of curiosity than hope. They apologized in their way. My mom cried. My dad admitted maybe they had been a little unfair. But even as they spoke, I realized something important. I didn't need their apology, not anymore, because my worth wasn't tied to their recognition anymore. I had built my own foundation, and it was stronger than anything they could give or take away. Over the next year, my life blossomed. I earned another promotion. I moved into a bigger apartment, one I decorated exactly how I wanted, with no one else's approval in mind. I traveled, by myself at first, then later with friends. I saw the world, tasted new foods, collected memories that were mine alone. And through it all, I kept that promise I made to myself the night I drove away from their house. Never invisible again. The truth is, favoritism leaves scars. It makes you question your worth in ways that can take years to unlearn. But it can also teach you something powerful, if you let it. It can teach you to find your voice, to demand space, to stop begging for crumbs and start building your own table. And that's what I did. Looking back now, I don't regret that confrontation. Yes, it was messy. Yes, it was painful. But it was also necessary. Because if I hadn't stood up that night, I might still be sitting at that table, invisible, waiting for a recognition that would never come. Instead, I walked away. And in walking away, I found myself. So when people ask me about my family, about Claire, about that unforgettable night, I tell them this: it was the night everything broke. But it was also the night I began to heal, because sometimes the only way to be seen is to stop waiting for others to notice you and start noticing yourself.